Alright, this is video 2 about Day 8, Vietnam. This is now Vietnam in, so I'm going to take it 1968 all the way to 1973 and possibly 1975. Now, in 1968, as I said, it was a year coming apart. Vietnam is not a total war. It's not born in a vacuum where the vast majority of Americans liked it. It was actually called the Living Room War because we had live news reports. People like Walter Cronkite and were on CBS Evening News live from these places in Vietnam. And we were being told, we're winning this war. What we actually learned is that when we saw these soldiers on TV, they didn't look like somebody who was winning. They looked like somebody who was losing, and losing their mind on top of that. So for that reason, the United States is divided into avionic, if you will, bird terms. There were the hawks, and the hawk is an aggressive bird. These were pro-Vietnam, want to get involved, want to see it through. The other one is the dove, and the dove has been a long since international sign of peace. So the doves are going to be the protesters, the hippies, etc., whereas the hawks are going to be kind of the military people. And there were no splicing of the two. There did not exist a hove or a dawk. You were either a hawk or a dove. That was it. You couldn't splice them. You couldn't say, I'm 50-50, I'm on the fence. It didn't work like that. Now, who are we fighting in Vietnam? Remember, I called them the Viet Minh in the beginning. However, in addition to fighting the Viet Minh in the north, we had another problem, and that was the Viet Cong. Now, the Viet Cong was a group of northern supporters, basically, in the south, and they existed through these tunnels, which I'll go through in a minute, and through all kinds of movies they were referred to as Charlie. I'm always looking for Charlie, right? So Charlie was this invisible foe. They were the Viet Cong, and they were extremely difficult to find. Number one, they used the tunnels, as I said. Number two, you can see them here. They blended in with typical society, so guerrilla warfare is definitely on the table here. And they're hardly... guerrilla warfare is extremely difficult to win, guys, if you don't know the terrain, and we didn't. Okay? Now, the Viet Cong are going to use a system of trails collectively referred to as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, as you can see, goes through Cambodia and Laos and brings supplies and troops from North to South Vietnam. This is what we're trying to find. However, very, very difficult. Now, the most infamous of these tunnels was called the Cu Chi Tunnels. Today it's kind of a touristy thing, and I'll show you some videos of the former Vietnam vets trying to get into these tunnel holes, and there's actually a firing range now. They have captured American tanks, and this is seen as touristy. You have to kind of go and do this, and you'll get it when I show you the video and the jokes that are made by the guide. It's kind of weird. Now, 1968 begins to happen, and on New Year's, we generally don't work. We go out and we party it up for New Year's. Yeah, ring in the New Year's. So Vietnam has a different calendar, and they have a different New Year, similar to a Chinese New Year's. They refer to this holiday, their New Year's, as the Tet. So on the occasion of the Vietnamese New Year 1968, we decide we're not going to press the issue and let them enjoy it. What happens is, and you can't see it underneath there, there was a series of coordinated attacks in South Vietnam, some simultaneous, some immediately after, but all on the same day, and it's referred to as the Tet Offensive. Now, we did end up winning this. We did end up pushing the Viet Cong back into the tunnels, but although it was a military victory, it was a political failure because politicians and people here in the United States are going, we don't understand these people. We're losing this war. We've got to find a way to get out. And so in 1968, whereas 1964 was the escalation or the going up, 1968 really is all about how do we get out. Now, that's an amazing thing because 1968 is an election year. So whoever promises to get us out of Vietnam is going to win. And he is a person we already have talked about, but he hadn't become president yet. That man is Richard Milhouse Nixon. Nixon wins the presidential election in 1968. The Democrats are associated with Vietnam, and so nobody wants him at this point. And through a person named Henry Kissinger, Nixon announces a plan called Vietnamization, and you can see it behind there, right? So the left part of that picture where it's making kind of the sharp hump is the escalation or going up in the war. Nixon's plan, you can see, is kind of a continual downfall of de-escalation. That's Vietnamization. It's the removal of troops and leaving the fight to the South Vietnamese, maybe small training, and we're out. Okay? People love this. This is kind of why Nixon is elected. However, he really doesn't start following through it really deeply until he's re-elected in 1972, and we'll get that in the protest movement coming up. Now, in 1973, Nixon has been re-elected. He sends his special assistant for foreign affairs to kiss a little butt. And I say to kiss a little butt because the man's name was Henry Kissinger. So they negotiate the 1973 Treaty of Paris. In it, they said, again, much like Korea, the 17th parallel would continue to exist. There would be two countries, and we'd kind of resolve the issue. However, something happens. And we'll get to that something in a second. Now, in 1973, Congress wants to reassert their power of war. So they will pass the War Powers Act. And even though Nixon vetoed it, they overrode it. You can't override a veto with a 3/4% of the vote. They did. So what the War Powers Act does, and it's still in effect today, the President must notify Congress 48 hours before he wants to go to war or wants to commit troops. 2 days. At that point, he only has 90 days to commit them and also a 30-day withdrawal period. And it's up to Congress to re-up that. Now, has this been violated? Yes. Nixon will violate it himself, and Bill Clinton famously is another one who violated this War Powers Act, and we'll see how that works. Now, the end of Vietnam, not the protest, but in 1975, this is the scene with the American troop presence greatly reduced and the South Vietnamese reeling from the Viet Cong attacks. The North Vietnamese army will invade the South, and its capital city of Saigon will fall. Now, if you look for the map today, Saigon, Vietnam does not exist. It is now called, ironically enough, Ho Chi Minh City. Vietnam, to this day, maintains a semi-communistic rule. But this is why we can say Korea was a tie. It's still kind of divided, and no one really won. But guys, let's call it as it is. Vietnam was a loss. We didn't achieve any of our objectives. Communism succeeded. And so definitely at this point, this is a turning point in the Cold War. And from 1975 on, we're going to take a new kind of tactic into that, something called détente, that Nixon actually promoted. And we'll get that in day 10. Now, the next video go along with this. It is day 9, and it is the opposition to Vietnam, the protest movement. And that's really good stuff.